Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we will be talking about whatever you guys want to talk about. This is basically part two of the mailbag episode yesterday. If you guys haven't tuned in or you missed it for whatever reason, the guys from Locked On Lakers, the Kamenetsky brothers, Andy and Brian, they popped on here and they helped answer a couple questions from the mailbag. We expanded on those quite a bit, though, and it meant that we only got to a couple questions from the mailbag. And I like to answer as many of them as I possibly can to get a full reset going into the following week. So what I'm going to do in this episode is get to a few of the questions that we didn't get to yesterday. And then, obviously, over the course of the show, if you guys have any questions, you can leave them, obviously, in the chat, and I'll get to as many of those as I can as well. So, quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button if you guys are not subscribed here to the YouTube channel. We are, I think, heading towards 7,000 subscribers or something like that. A modest number. I would like to make it a little less modest. And then if you guys are watching on Twitter, you can find the show at youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find it there. If you guys are listening to the show in its podcast form, which most of you do, just make sure you're subscribed and leave those questions in the form of a 5-star review, and I will get to them every single week whenever we get them. So that's all of the, I guess it's called housekeeping here in the biz. So we'll go ahead and dive on into a few more of your questions from over the weekend. All right, just really quickly, I do have to do something. YouTube does this dumb thing where your monetization is not automatically turned on, and I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. All right, so the first things first here. I did answer. I checked YouTube iTunes. No additional iTunes questions there. So going to go ahead and X out of there. But I did answer. So yesterday's episode, we answered a really fun question about the backlash from KD's decision potentially impacting some superstars sticking around longer term. That was a fun conversation. And the second one was what happens if the Jokic-Giannis plan fails. And that was also a fun little debate between the three of us. So again, check out that episode from yesterday. It is right here on YouTube, and then obviously in the feed, and it's 3 parts. The first one I'm just going to go in order of when I see them here. At KR Swish asks, who did you pick in the first 2 rounds at fantasy football this season? So I'm in 2 leagues, and they're both pretty different from each other. One is an 8-team league, which means everybody's rosters are absolutely stacked. I had first pick in that league, and took Jamar Chase first. See if I can pull up my team. I don't know why it's not letting me. Let's see. My team. Here we go. All right. So my first 2 picks were where is he? Jamar Chase, and then I took Devin Achan, and felt pretty good about it. I mean, you have to feel pretty good about an 8-team draft. So that roster goes as follows. I have Burrow at quarterback, Achan, James Cook, Jamar Chase, Ladd McConkey, Brock Bowers, Aaron Jones. We actually get to pick a defensive player. So I reached a little bit and took Travis Hunter for my defensive player. We'll see how that goes. I guess he's listed right now as a wide receiver, and he's also listed, obviously, as like a backup cornerback. So we'll see how that plays out for him. And then I have the Vikings defense and Jake Bates. I also have Keenan Allen, Travis Etienne Jr., Jake Ferguson, Jared Goff, Jacoby Myers, Montgomery from Detroit, and a backup defensive player, Spillane, from New Orleans. So that's kind of a fun twist on the way that I've normally done it. My other league is a 12-team league, and that one, you get to round 7 and you're like, woo, all right, here we go. But my first couple picks there, well, I had a keeper, so I kept Tyreek Hill from last year. That might wind up being a mistake. I could have also kept Achan or Bucky Irving, and kind of wishing I would have kept one of those guys. But still, I took let's see, got to remember how this went. I think I took Kyron Williams first, and then I took Brock Bowers. I'm a big Bowers guy. I think Bowers going to have a good year. So, yeah, I just, it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. I know fantasy football talk, or talking about my fantasy football team isn't the most popular thing, but I am one thing I've debated setting up a fantasy football team or a fantasy football league for the Discord and see if we could just draft really quick, at some point over the next couple of days. But the problem with that is it would be a free league, and I just don't have the bandwidth to care about a free league. So I don't want to do that, but I do think I am going to set up a fantasy football, part of the Discord where we can all kind of get together and talk about this stuff and vent and all of that. And you guys can tell me about your fantasy teams. I just think that's more effective than setting up some league that everybody's just kind of half-ass and move on from there. So, yeah, well, let me know what you guys think in the chat, if you guys would be interested. And if you guys want the link to the Discord, I guess I could drop that in here as well. It's been fun. I really enjoyed the Discord. I obviously get most of my engagement from Twitter, but it's so much more fun to pop in and not see so many angry people. So here's the link to the Discord. There's a lot of back and forth between everybody else who is in the Discord, and every so often I'll pop in there and give my thoughts. There's a mailbag section of the Discord as well that you guys could ask your questions, either to get them answered there in that portion of the Discord, or if you want me to answer them on the show, I can get to them there too. So the link is there in the chat now. Let me know though. Fantasy football, see how we should do it. If you guys really, really, really want a fantasy league, let me know, and maybe I'll just set one up really quick. Next question here comes from Gregory Brown, who asks, do you anticipate new ownership eventually phasing out Jeanie Buss? Also, do you see Pelinka still being in his role in the future, or is it a matter of time Walter and the Guggenheims get their own people in? So obviously, in terms of macro discussions, I don't think there's a more important or impactful discussion than this one, or question, or series of questions that I have gotten over the course of the summer than this one. And obviously, when a team changes ownership, that means you now have to call into question everything you thought you knew about that team and how they typically operate. With the Lakers, I know that when the Celtics, with Grusebeck when he was kind of pushed off stage left, and they tried to do the whole no, I swear he's sticking around. Stop. I don't know why it's ego is what it comes down to for these billionaires. I don't know why these billionaires are so adamant that they have to I swear we're still sticking around. It's just so dumb. You sold. Enjoy your billions and go away. But so when the Grusebeck thing happened, um, a, a lot of Lakers fans immediately jumped to the conclusion of, huh, well, this probably doesn't bode well for Jeanie. I'm going to backtrack a little bit on this topic. Before the Lakers sale even happened, and before I even started hearing any whispers about it, um, Michael Jordan sold. Well, no, backtrack even further. At one point, Jeanie Buss, Rick Grusebeck, and Michael Jordan were all invested in a tequila company, Sincoro. And I think Grusebeck had the most at stake in that tequila company. I think Michael had the second most, and I think Jeanie had the third most. And the reason I say all of this is because those were the two owners that I believe Jeanie is closest to in the league, or was closest to in the league. And that tequila company winds up doing rather well. They all sell their shares, and I think Jeanie made like $40 million or something off of selling, that tequila company, off the sale of that tequila company. And then shortly thereafter, Michael Jordan sells. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Again, because Michael, of the other owners out there in the league, and Cuban also sold too. I believe Mark Cuban and Jeanie were friendly. Um, but Michael sells his Charlotte Hornets. And that was the first time that I started kind of asking around, what does this potentially mean for Jeanie? And is this something that Jeanie Buss and the rest of the Buss siblings would consider doing? And I was told, probably not. Like, never say never, but prices on these teams are getting to a point where it's impossible not to listen to, you know, evaluations in the tens of billions of dollars, right? And so Michael sells, and then Grusebeck sells. And that's when I'm like, okay, this is loud. These are Jeanie Buss's two, favorite other owners in the league. They were all in business together. You know that if they were getting ready to talk about doing any of this, they were talking about it to each other, I would imagine. And that was the first time when I was like, went back out, talked to a lot of the same people that I was talking to, and then had it brought up to me in other situations that, like, Guggenheim is getting a little restless. We think that they're, trying to make a push to buy the team. So and then obviously they sell. Jeanie Buss and the Buss family sells, and make a really important note as part of the sale. They the Buss family trust still maintains the 15% ownership stake that is necessary to continue making or continue operating as governor. Now they are minority owners, and that's going to complicate things. But I think the biggest delineation between the Mark Cuban situation and the Wick Grusebeck situation and the situation here with the Lakers is that, to the best of my understanding, I don't believe Grusebeck owns the necessary 15%. And as such, when he tried to operate as the governor still, the league was like, you can't do that. You don't own enough of the team. And the Mavericks, right, with their sale, Mark Cuban didn't really have a leg to stand on legally. He had what sounds like a verbal agreement, but there, I don't believe it was anything in writing. And the Adelsons were able to just kind of nudge him out. And then, here with the difference here, again, to the best of my knowledge, is that Jeanie does have a legal leg to stand on here and some grounds to stand on, um, to make it so that she sticks around as governor for I don't know how long. Now, the number that has been floated out there is anywhere between 5 and 7 years. That seems long, be completely honest. I would, I would probably say, and now the sale isn't finalized. It's supposed to be finalized at some point, either this quarter that we're currently in right now, or Q1 of next year. And we'll see whenever that sale is finalized, what the what the actual details and the executed details of that sale are going to be. And the reason that this is all very important, obviously, is because it's not necessarily just about Jeanie Buss. There are things that she does or doesn't do that I wish that she would do differently. But Jeanie Buss being phased out means Linda Rambis loses her standing in the organization, which therefore means Kurt Rambis loses his standing in the organization. Um, Tim Harris, I believe, is slightly different, but still, I don't, I would imagine he loses a lot of the cachet that he has within the organization, and Rob Pelinka's standing now gets called into question, and that's why this season is going to be so important for everybody involved, to see how everybody handles it, because this is kind of an audition. Even let's say the 5 to 7 years timeline is etched in stone. It is legally binding. There are no loopholes. This is just going to be the reality that Jeanie Buss and Mark Walter have worked out as part of the sale. Let's say that is the case, and everybody involved who has those ties back to Jeanie is safe for those 5 to 7 years. Well, that might mean that, like, it takes some of the urgency away from this current season, but, like, this idea that they wouldn't also then have to maintain some urgency, or that they would have to be like, they would be safe, maybe Rob Pelinka was getting ready to retire anyway in 5 to 7 years or something like that. That's possible. But still, like, this is still very much, and I always call back to the example with the Dodgers, where Guggenheim buys the Dodgers, and they at the time the Dodgers were run. They had their manager in place, Don Mattingly, and their GM, whose name, gosh darn it, I can see his face, and I'm blanking on the name, but they could have, gone in, cleaned house right away. And they yeah, I would say that with that situation, I'm trying there's a comment here from Avery. Mark, I'm guessing Cuban, said the league made him take it out of the contract. His interview with Locked On Mavs was good. Yeah. So yeah, again, these are league-wide rules. And as much as these owners would love to massage their ego with the notion that, yeah, I get to sell, and guess what? I'm still in charge. Like, sorry, it was never going to go like that. And I always kind of laughed at the notion of it. But in this case, I think the Buss Trust owns enough to where it's different from the Mark Cuban situation and the Wick Grusbeck situation. But still, there's a, good comment here. Mark, from Kubler. Mark Walter is not an idiot, and only an idiot would send 10 billion for a business and then let the owner continue as is. The as is important here. Let's say that Jeanie Buss does get to continue to run the Lakers for the next 5 years. Okay, fine. Mark Walter could still go to Jeanie Buss and say, all right, you're still technically in charge, wink, wink, but I'm going to bring you all of these resources to bring the Lakers up to up to snuff and catch up with the rest of the teams in the league. And we're going to operate. Yeah, you might be the figurehead, who gets to go to the governor meetings, and you still get your seats, and you can still pat yourself on the back and say, yeah, sure, I'm in charge. But at the end of the day, we're going to run this business the way that I expect to run this business. And at that point, Jeanie running or maintaining her governorship um, is all but in name. The thing, like I was saying with the Dodgers, though, is that like they showed up, and Stan Kasten was made CEO, I believe, of the Dodgers, or the highest ranking baseball position. And he shows up, and Ned Colletti, God, finally, Ned Colletti was the GM of the Dodgers at the time. And they basically showed up, and they were like, yeah, we want to see how you guys operate. We want to see how y'all are living. And then weren't impressed enough to keep everybody involved in all of the capacities that they were previously involved. They go out and they hire Andrew Friedman, who was running the Tampa Bay Rays. And at the time, the Rays were this like incredible story where you're in a division with the Boston Red Sox, and you're in a division with the New York Yankees. And this was back when the Yankees were still spending, because George Steinbrenner still cared, the Steinbrenners still cared about money or baseball. And yet the Rays were keeping right there. And it was through analytics. It was through, a full understanding of how an organization should run at every level. They invested in their farm system. They invested in scouting, and they had Joe Madden, who was this manager who was ahead of his time. And they just outsmarted teams to be able to keep up with the spending that they could not maintain there at that level. So the Dodgers go out and they hire Friedman, and they tell him, hey, here's how we want to operate. You are going to be in charge, obviously, of all of this stuff. But every single person that you would potentially want to hire and run this team with, we're going to go and get them. Farhan Zaidi, come on in here. Alex Anthopoulos, come on in here. There's another guy who I always forget. Come on in here. And they had this like crazy front office. And those dudes, they would just sit there in their offices together, and they would just talk baseball. And from those conversations would stem the way that the Dodgers would eventually be run. They invested like crazy in the farm system. They invested like crazy in international prospect scouting and international free agency. They went out. They fired Don Mattingly, and when they fired Don Mattingly, they brought in something like 13 candidates to interview over the course of that managerial searching process. And like whenever they arrived at who they were going to hire, which obviously wound up being Dave Roberts, you knew that decision was going to be a wise one and a well-informed one. And you compare that to how the last few Lakers coaches were hired. Luke Walton, right, was the Lakers' basically only target at the time. And they just jumped at that opportunity, paid him, and made him the coach without really taking anybody very seriously. Then after that didn't work out, right? You had the really kind of bumbling and stumbling process that led to hiring Frank Vogel, where they thought they were going to hire Ty Lue. Ty Lue thought he was going to be hired by the Lakers. Then they lowballed him, and Rob Pelinka, being kind of the snake that he was at the time, was like, not only are we going to lowball you, not give you the years that you want, but we also want to go out and force you to hire, God, who was it? I think it was Jason Kidd. But he also wanted, Kurt Rambis to be able to go and sit in on coaches meetings, and Rob Pelinka wanted to be in there on coaches meetings. And that was not done at the time, still isn't really done. And Ty Lue was like, I'm not going to work for you guys in this organization where clearly you wouldn't trust me to do my job. So those negotiations fall apart. And at the time, you had Monty Williams was somebody the Lakers were kind of interested in. He got sick of waiting. He takes the Phoenix job. And they wanted to hire Jason Kidd as their head coach. LeBron wanted to hire Jason Jason Kidd as the head coach. But we at Silver Screen reminded everybody, it was like, hey, here's this dude's track record, literal criminal track record. And we wrote about it, and it was asked in a press conference there. And the Lakers didn't like the noise that was popping up around him as a potential head coach. So they finally kind of like looked around, and Frank Vogel was still kind of sitting there waiting for his interview. And they're like, all right, fuck it, you get the job. And they hired Frank Vogel. They never believed in the dude. They hire Jason Kidd to be his lead assistant, and they basically force Jason Kidd on Frank Vogel. They make Kidd the highest paid assistant coach in basketball. And the reason that they did that was because they anticipated at some point getting to fire Frank Vogel and, say, oh, golly gee, well, I guess Jason Kidd's the interim and he's going to be the head coach after whatever. Then Frank Vogel pisses off everybody in the organization and wins a championship. So they couldn't do that. And his reward for winning an actual NBA championship was the saddest handjobist extension that they basically give him one extra year. You look at what every other coach who has won a championship, what their extension looks like. And Frank Vogel's was like, here's a gift card to Bed Bath and Beyond. So, but, and the reason that they obviously Jason Kidd, they win that championship. Jason Kidd goes and gets hired by the Dallas Mavericks, and the Lakers are like, oh, there goes our guy. And the reason I say all of this is because they basically their process on all of these things is they become infatuated with a singular hire, and then they either they basically hire that guy, and then so it doesn't work out with Frank Vogel. The Russell Westbrook thing was such a disaster, and they blamed Frank Vogel for not being able to make that work. Meanwhile, no team seems particularly upset when Russell Westbrook leaves. So clearly, that wasn't a Frank Vogel problem. So they fire Frank Vogel. They bring in Darvin Ham. And one of the interview questions that they had for all of the coaches at the time was like, can you make this Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, LeBron James thing work? And Darvin was dumb enough to say, yeah. Well, smart enough to say, yeah, but dumb enough to say, yeah, at the same time. And the Lakers again became kind of infatuated with Darvin Ham, hired him. Little more searching there, but not too much searching. Rob's big thing there was that he wanted, it was kind of a Jerry Jones hire, right? Where he hires people to basically allow him to call plays. Darvin works out his first year. Everybody's really, really excited about it. He gets a little too, self-confident. And the following season, when everybody else is on the same page of continuity and building on last year, Darvin comes in and is like, yeah, we're playing Cam Reddish and Torian Prince. Rui, you're riding the bench to start the season. And everything just kind of went downhill from there. So he fired Darvin Ham, and JJ Redick winds up becoming, again, this infatuation internally with the Lakers. I reported very early on in that process that basically they were hoping to be wowed by JJ Redick in his conversations with them. JJ Redick, one of the more charismatic people in the media industry at the time, and one of the more charismatic former NBA players to basically ever come out of the league. He wows them, as you would anticipate. You had the Dan Hurley thing, but there are still people who swear that Woj was making all of that up. And now but that entire process was, again, this infatuation with JJ Redick. He couldn't take the job right away because he was hired by ABC and Disney, and he didn't want to burn that bridge. So we had to do this whole dog and pony show and pretend that JJ wasn't going to be, or that there was a possibility that JJ wasn't going to be the guy. That's the Dan Hurley backstory here. But JJ winds up being hired, and at no point was there ever anybody that was all that seriously a contender for that gig. Yeah, there was like James Borrego stuff, and a lot of the noise there was that AD wanted Borrego. LeBron obviously wanted JJ. LeBron winds up winning, and here we kind of stand, and like all of those processes were all fatally flawed in one way or another. And I'm just telling you that, like, that is not how the Dodgers would operate. That is not how Mark Walter would operate if he had to hire for a position as important as head coach. So, like, even if Jeanie Buss is operating as the governor or whatever, um, I would imagine that from here on out, a lot of these decisions are going to be a lot smarter. It's going to be interesting. JJ Redick is going to have 2 years left on his contract after this season. A lot of these decisions are going to be made very, very differently, even if Jeanie Buss is operating as a quote unquote governor. And they're eventually going to bring in a scouting department. They've already started to invest in some of the back end stuff. They've invested in their training staff, and they've invested in their medical staff already. And some of these things are going to be even further invested into over the course of this transition period. And then by the time this thing is finalized, the sale is finalized, that's when you'll really see the facelifts and stuff like that. And we'll see, what that means for a lot of the people who are currently employed. Rob Pelinka is going to be it's going to be interesting here because Rob is not the most trusting person. He runs the Lakers very much like Neil O'Shea used to run the Blazers. And he manages up. He doesn't really have time for the people below him. And he is very much an agent in the sense that, like, he understands who he needs to kind of glob onto to stick around and maintain his position within the organization. In this case, now it's Luka. Before, right? Remember when they first got LeBron, how often Rob would try to have himself pictured with LeBron. Then they bring in Luka, and now you have that video of Rob dancing there with Luka. Like, this is just kind of how it's going to go. And we're going to talk in a second about JJ's role in personnel decisions and stuff like that. But it's going to be interesting to see how Rob handles all of this, where his instinct is always going to be managing upward and doing whatever it takes to remain employed. Well, if Mark Walter and his group show up and says, "Hey, what you're going to have to do to remain employed is be okay with being number 2, and we're going to go out and get somebody with an actual vision for the basketball team here," it's going to be interesting to see how Rob handles that. At that point, Rob might just say, "You know what? I've been doing this for long enough. I'm at the stage of my career in my life where I just am fine with retiring." Maybe he chooses to do that. Or he does say, "You know what? Fine. Let's go out and I will prepare myself to work with whoever it is that you bring in to be, in essence, in this case, his boss." And I like, here's the thing. I think, like, Pete and Darius, I don't know if they've released part 2 of that conversation, but they've had a really good conversation, at least the one episode that I heard, where they were talking about Rob Pelinka. And I think there are things that Rob is very good at. I think he's excellent when somebody with actual vision goes to him and say, "Hey, help me like execute this vision." I think Rob is very good at that. I truly believe that he's incredibly organized. He's kind of a like taskmaster. It's just like, I think he's very good at and originally it was going to be Magic who had the vision and Rob who executed it. The problem was Magic showed up and never really worked very hard on the job. So like they had that, Magic showed up and his vision at first was all these point guards and creators and tough guys around LeBron. That was a disaster. And then when that was a disaster, Magic was like, you know what? I kind of like just being a billionaire. I think I'm going to go back to that, which didn't surprise anybody who had paid attention to Magic Johnson's career. He's not very good at stuff that doesn't just involve throwing money at problems. So like the part that the Lakers are kind of missing right now is the role that Magic should have been fulfilling, where it's a basketball lifer and it's somebody who has a clear vision for how to build around Luka or how to build around LeBron or how to build around Anthony Davis and LeBron or Luka and LeBron. Like they need that person who actually has a vision of how to do these things, and not somebody like Rob who was just willing to do whatever it takes to remain employed. So, which includes, by the way, throwing his superstars under the bus, maybe with two S's, when things don't go well. And it's going to be interesting to see, if Luka and Bill Duffy have a certain idea for a direction that the roster could go in. And if that doesn't work out, is Rob going to do the thing that he did with LeBron, where it was like, yeah, that was really kind of LeBron's idea. Or, maybe we shouldn't really fully entrust those guys with the decisions from now on. Like if he does that, and that starts tarnishing the Lakers' reputation with superstars out there, then it's really time for him to go. But it's going to be interesting to see, I don't think that while Jeanie Buss is owner and governor, there is nobody coming in and being Rob's boss. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Lakers basically operate, or if they remain kind of rudderless in this Luka, at the onset of the Luka era, how quickly Mark Walters says, you know what, guys, you've had your opportunity. I know what you have your 15% or whatever. But stop and, just go sit over there. You can still keep calling yourself governor if you like, but I'm majority owner. I'm going to bring in my people. I'm going to run this team the way that I've run the Dodgers, and in a way that has won the Dodgers all these division titles, hundreds of games every single year, a couple of World Series to my name. I want to be able to bring that to the Lakers here. You're just kind of in the way. Go over there. And that'll be interesting to see if or how quickly we arrive there, if the currently employed parties grow frustrated with the Lakers wanting to operate in a more modern fashion. So to follow up on that one, the next question here comes from at Dedudzen, who asks, how much say did JJ get in the free agent pickups in Thero's draft? Because both Ayton and Smart were kind of no-brainers, so I'm not sure how much of JJ's input was really needed anyway. Does JJ hold enough power where he could have said, no, I don't want Ayton? All right, so here's, again, think of this as Rob managing up. Who outranks whom here, Luka or JJ? It's clearly Luka. He's the face of the organization. Like when Luka says jump, Rob now says how high. So, and look, this isn't to say that Luka and JJ were at odds. I don't think JJ doesn't like any of the additions that the Lakers made over the course of the offseason. But let's just look at how the two drafts were framed the last couple of years, where last year they draft Dalton Connect. They have their press conference. Rob tells that stupid story about JJ started drawing up plays for Dalton. He just spontaneously combusted into this moment of creativity. And he started drawing up plays for Dalton. I have people within the Lakers who are like, he didn't do that. That was just nonsense. Um, but you compare that to like when the Lakers drafted Thero, and it was like we basically didn't hear from JJ over the course of the summer, including summer league. So now I think some of that is JJ kind of hunkering down and working out kind of the fallout of his first NBA season, and his first season as a head coach basically anywhere. So I think he's probably more focused on that. But the kind of uh the PR spin here is kind of important. That was a Rob Pelinka, ran his victory lap for navigating the draft, and look, credit to him for doing so. And it's going to be interesting to see, if Thero doesn't work out, how Rob kind of manages the PR cycle there. But regardless, he's the second round pick, and second round picks are second round picks. As far as Ayton goes, right? Agents, he shares an agent, Bill Duffy, with Luka Doncic. Luka got on the phone. And as soon as it became clear that Ayton was going to be bought out, the Lakers basically, from what I've kind of heard, the Lakers basically just planned for losing Dorian Finney-Smith. Like they never made him a very serious offer after it became clear that Ayton was going to be bought out, because they knew that if they wanted a shot at Ayton, they needed their full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. And if they were going to get access to that without sending out like Kleba trading him into cap space, or without trading Gabe Vincent into cap space, I would have preferred that they traded Kleba into cap space personally, but that's not how Rob operates. They basically made the decision to let Dorian walk. He goes to Houston. We know all of the drama behind the scenes there as well. He goes to Houston. The Lakers get their access to the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Luka says use it on Ayton. They use it on Ayton. The Laravia thing. Look, Austin Reeves is very and is held in very high regard within the organization. His agent is on very good standing with the Lakers, but Rob might want to make it even that better standing as they get ready for negotiations with Austin in the next couple of years. So they go and they bring in Laravia, who there's reasons to like him as a basketball player too, don't get me wrong, but this is all how kind of an agent would handle all of this stuff. So that's how you arrive at Laravia. And then Luka, competed against Marcus Smart over the years. And when it became clear that Smart was probably going to be bought out as well, the Lakers, acted really, really quickly. This was one of those stories over the course of the summer that, I was able to report on pretty thoroughly. They moved quickly and they positioned themselves for if and when Marcus Smart was bought out. Washington looked for trade partners, but they didn't want to have to attach anything to get rid of Smart, so they just wound up buying him out. The Lakers moved after Luka spoke to Marcus Smart on the phone, and they signed Smart. At no point here does it appear that JJ was like, factored into any of these decisions very thoroughly, because right now, Rob and this summer, remember, like everything that the Lakers were doing was to try to prove to Luka that they are worthy of his services. When it comes time to sign that extension. So the focus this summer was pleasing Luka, getting him to sign that extension. We'll see if now that he has signed that extension, if maybe that swings back around a little bit, maybe JJ matters a little bit more. But I don't get the sense that JJ's input was factored in anywhere near as seriously as Luka's did, which again, like I know a lot of times I say things and because of my tone, it's taken as criticism. This isn't criticism. I think a lot of this stuff makes sense because the Lakers had a lot riding on Luka signing that extension and signing that extension quickly with zero drama attached to that extension signing. So yeah, to answer the question, how much say did Redick have? I don't really sense a bunch. All right, let's answer a few of these. Let's see if I have any questions here from the chat. Yeah, let's see. Avery asking, sorry for being a few minutes behind. Do you think the front office actually took into account Braun and AD's preference for that search that led to JJ? I think LeBron, I don't think AD's input was factored in at all, especially based on some of Jeanie's comments after the AD trade. Like, I talked about this. I forget if this was in the lounge portion of it or the Locked On Lakers portion of it, but there's a big step down from how the Lakers treat second best players compared to how they treat best players. So like Kobe, right, got everything under the moon that they could have he ever asked for. And then, Powell was a part of trade rumors for the last like 2-3 years of his career. I think with AD, he was asking for a center for years and didn't never got his center. And as soon as they traded him, they traded for the center that maybe he would have been kind of asking for indirectly. So like 80s look, and AD again, like I said earlier, he preferred Borrego. He had more of a relationship with Borrego. Didn't have any real relationship with JJ. And I'm not going to go so far as to say that that was like a point of contention there, but there were times certainly where I was hearing that AD wasn't over the moon about JJ's tactics and game plans and stuff like that. AD isn't the kind of guy to like really raise hell over those things, but he'll make it known, especially on defense where he doesn't like something. And there were definitely some times where he didn't like some of the things that the Lakers were doing defensively, all the switching and stuff like that comes to mind. And yeah, like I think had AD had his choice, it would have been Borrego. LeBron and Clutch like to say, they like to distance themselves from the JJ hire, but we kind of knew what his preference would have been there too. And then also, look, this is some 40 chess from Rob here, but I also kind of got the sense that if they hired JJ, like they didn't think when they were hiring JJ Redick that Luka Doncic was on the table in any way, shape, or form. So when they hired JJ Redick, they were basically just hiring somebody to coach the last couple of years of LeBron's career. And they were basically thinking that, like, yeah, if it works out, cool. If not, then he's just kind of attached to LeBron. And when LeBron retires or goes, then Redick will also probably go and you'll move forward that way. And, seeing as JJ was LeBron's, podcast co-host, because of the, perception that comes with hiring LeBron's co-host, that becomes a really easy thing for Rob to kind of pin on LeBron if it doesn't work out. So, especially internally. So, yeah, I think there was a lot kind of going on there. I don't think 80's input mattered at all. I think they knew that LeBron kind of preferred JJ without LeBron having to specifically say he preferred JJ. And then again, look, JJ, interviewed well, and he was somebody that they were hoping would interview well, and he got the gig. So that's how that went. Let's see. I'm not saying that Robert, JJ is smarter than anyone in this chat, including me and you. I'm not saying that he isn't. I'm not, I'm not saying any of that stuff. I think JJ, at some point in his life will probably be a really good head coach. I also think he had an absolute disaster class of a postseason that makes me really nervous for what he's going to look like when the going gets tough here moving forward. I thought he handled criticism really poorly. I thought he completely overreacted, completely thought himself up against a wall with some of his decisions over the course of that series. And he got he got owned in that series by a coach who, by the way, like very quickly also got his butt kicked in in his in the following series. So yeah, look, this is the thing. Like, if I criticize a player, I'm not saying that I could do the thing that I'm criticizing a player for anywhere near as well is what the player can do. If I criticize a coach, I do so with the understanding that that coach has probably forgotten more basketball than I've ever thought about. So, like, there's no need to take and by the way, I wasn't even criticizing him. I was just pointing out how those decisions went and what went into those decisions. I wasn't criticizing JJ. I was just offering up the context that a different listener was asking for. All right, let's do a couple kind of fun ones here at the end. I'm skipping some of the questions that I've answered at various points over the course of the summer. The real Noel 86 asks, "What's the story behind you becoming a Vikings fan?" So when I was a kid, I saw the Vikings playing in purple and gold, and I thought that they were like distant relatives of the Lakers, like cousins, I guess, of the Lakers. Was not wrong necessarily, right? Given where the Lakers were coming from. And then I'd have to remember what year it was, but when I was really becoming a big sports fan, um, the Vikings had Randy Moss and Dante Culpepper and Robert Smith and Klein Saucer and Randall, and like they were getting ready to make their kind of runs. They went 15-1 in one of those seasons, and I bought in hook, line, and sinker. Moss is my favorite football player of all time. For my money, the best receiver I've ever seen. Now, I didn't really see much of Jerry Rice's career, so forgive me. But yeah, that like Moss season where they went 15-1 and unfortunately lost to the Falcons on a fucking field goal. That was the first time, by the way, that I ever like cried because of a sporting event or a sporting outcome where the Nick Anderson missed his field goal and then Morton Anderson steps up and he makes his. And when he made his and it ended overtime, I literally like ran out of the house, sat on the curb and just cried because I didn't want to cry in front of my dad because he was making fun of me for being a Vikings fan. He's like, "This is what Vikings fandom is." So I like went outside and I actually cried about it. And for some reason, I didn't take that as a sign from God to find a different football team to root for, because all they've ever done for me since is like break my heart. But yeah, that's kind of where it started. When I was a kid, I thought they were connected to the Lakers, and then they had a really, really good team that I fell in love with, and I have followed them ever since. But man, whew, Moss was incredible. Let's see. At Step Back Cast, what's your favorite kind of taco and why? All right. So, man, that's a good question. I would probably say a breakfast taco is my favorite kind. Out here, we in Texas, we have breakfast tacos. Back home, we have breakfast burritos. But breakfast tacos. So what I've started doing is I actually whisk Cholula into my scrambled eggs. Um, and then I'll throw some refried beans on there, some bacon, some chorizo. And then they make this green salsa out here that they don't make back home that is really, really spicy. But I love it. So I'll usually get a couple of those and like a small bowl of either menudo or caldo de res. And that is like, that's usually for brunch. That's 2 meals for me. But that to me is like the perfect weekend. You're a little thick from the night before kind of breakfast. And like there are other tacos that you could probably talk me into. I love making carne asada. So like I'll make that, and my carne asada tacos are really, really good. Jen makes a really good pulled pork that we turn into carnitas, and those those tacos are really, really good. We've actually started making chile verde with that, which is even better because you get to like you do the Mexican chopsticks thing where you rip up the tortilla and you stick that into there and you get some of the broth in there, get some rice, some beans, throw some salsa on top, and that shit is fuck. That is on point. Um, yeah, I would say those. Like, I've never been a big seafood taco guy. Um, really don't like fried fish tacos. Not really my thing. At that point, I would just rather get fried fish, put some lime on it, whip up some cocktail sauce, and eat it that way. But yeah, yeah, I guess a shrimp taco is pretty good. I make pretty good shrimp tacos, Cajun shrimp tacos. Those are pretty good. The thing is, like, when you learn how to cook, it opens up everything. It makes it really hard to have a favorite food. And it makes it really hard also, given how expensive it is to eat out. It makes it hard to enjoy going and eating at a restaurant. The because it's like, you go out and a glass of wine is $12 if you're lucky. Your meal, especially if you get tacos, now they sell tacos individually. So you're talking like, a $15 plate of tacos plus, your margarita, which was another like $9 or $10. And that's just for me. You got to order food for the kids, and Jen's ordering her food. And yeah, it's just like I make all of this food at least as well, probably better, and I make a better margarita, or I have my own wine at home if we're eating a meal that you would expect wine with. I don't know. But that's a fun question. I will say this. I think I would have a different stance on those tacos if I still lived back home, because the Mexican food back home is so much lighter and fresher than all of the Mexican food here. It's like this Tex-Mex nonsense that like Mex was perfectly fine. You didn't need to add Tex to it. Anyway, here we are. Let's see. Hunter Heffington writes, "Oh, and actually, I just saw this notification. Shouts to Andy for reminding us. I should have said this on the show last night when Andy and Brian were on it. They mentioned it. Andy mentioned it on Locked On Lakers, so I'll make sure to mention it here. But 7:30 Pacific time, I will be on ESPN LA on Andy's Lakers show there on ESPN LA radio, which always kind of means a little bit to me. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, the Lakers Talk is what his show is called. It always means a little bit to me because I grew up listening ESPN LA, listening to ESPN LA. So getting to go on that show and that channel is I always get a big kick out of it. So, yeah, I'll be on there with Andy tonight, and I believe we're either talking Austin or LeBron. Just depends on what we decide to talk about. So check out that a little bit later tonight. All right, Hunter Heffington writes, "How closely did you follow the Nico situation? As a Tennessee fan, I'm biased against him, but he had a mediocre season, asked for more money, didn't get it, sat out practices, was kicked off Tennessee. It's early, but so far Tennessee is winning the breakup." Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it kind of helps Tennessee that he went to UCLA. I think Deshaun Foster is a really, really bad coach. I'm always against coaches who think the answer is less media access. It's not the media's fault. You don't have your shit together. And so, like, I'm not that impressed with Nico. He obviously has the physical tools. But we'll see. I just don't think UCLA has their stuff together well enough to maximize the Nico experience here. So, yeah, I'm rooting for him. I'll always be my grandparents met at UCLA, so I'll always have a soft spot for UCLA. Didn't go there. I went to Cal State Fullerton, but I've always been a UCLA football fan, UCLA basketball fan, all those things. My wife is a USC fan. So, that's always a fun game, but I don't have high hopes for this season. I don't think Deshaun Foster should last through this UCLA football season, but hopefully I'm wrong. All right. Generational hater. Go back to California then. I'm guessing you're from Texas. And it's a very Texan thing to say, like, get out of my country. Well, it's not yours. Texas isn't yours. Anyway, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you to everybody for your questions. We are fully cleared out and ready to go for next week's mailbag. Over the course of this week, we have a couple of guests lined up. I don't want to jinx them, though, so we will get to them when we get to them. And until then, and until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. Hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.